and blend in, try and close that gap, and eventually try and ambush. Whereas the wild dogs have a completely different method of hunting. And they will run down the prey species over 5 kilometers. If it goes any more than 5 kilometers, then they tend to leave it. They're actually one of the most successful hunters in Africa. And they tend to gain on an animal between 1.5 kilometers, 3 kilometers. And the whole pack of adults will start to chase an animal, and they'll keep the sights focused on one of those, or that particular animal. And they'll start to chase after it, and the front leader will stay with that animal. But if the animal turns a corner, you then get one of the members of the pack that are behind cutting that corner and catching up with the animal, so that the front leader will actually hang back in the pack again and rejuvenate his strength. So just gotta take this. Standing by.
You still with Madaj?
That's affirmative. They're static at the moment.
Okay. Mind if I join you?
No, matata for them. Standing by.
Yeah, all the dogs are coming back again. All of them is coming along in the path.
Awesome, all the dogs are coming. Copy, thanks Efren. So hopefully we're going to see some awesome interaction here. We're going to be seeing the youngsters begging for food. So the adults have gone off to hunt, and they're going to start licking the mouth for food. There's going to be quite a lot of noise. There we go, they're being called. Just over on the back there. Going to try and roll forward a little bit. Doesn't look like they brought much back actually. Okay. Hi Ed. Welcome on board this morning. Wondering how long dogs have actually been domesticated. That one I'm not entirely sure actually. But they came from wolves rather than African wild dogs or other species as far as I know. And it's just been breeding and breeding certain individuals with certain characteristics with other individuals to try and get the different species. I heard of a Labradoodle the other day. Never heard of that one before. It's actually humans selecting. There's one individual with a slightly longer nose than another, taking another individual with also a slightly longer nose, and that nose over time keeps getting longer and longer if the human is actually selecting individuals to mate with each other. But timeline-wise, I'm not entirely sure when the wolf was actually domesticated. Maybe someone can look that one up for us and find out. Obviously the Egyptians used to keep cats. There's actually evidence of mummified cats to suggest that they were kept as pets, and obviously they were revered as well. And I don't think it's very easy to domesticate a wild dog, a wild hunting dog. I've not heard of any stories of hunting dogs being domesticated. And I think a lot of it is to do with the way that they do live, that it's very similar to wolves, and that they have the alpha male and female. And it's actually quite heavily weighed. You tend to get more males in a pack than females, and it's actually the females that will migrate. Generally sisters will move away and join up with a bachelor group of males who may have left the pack for whatever reason. The pack numbers can reach up to 60 sometimes, and before people actually hunting them and shooting them, there could be packs of up to 100. And they actually do rely quite heavily on the adults bringing food back for the pups. So you can get quite a huge litter, anywhere between 2 and 20 pups at a time. And the alpha female will stay in the den while the rest of the adults go and hunt, and she will nurse the pups, and the adults will then bring meat back for her. And obviously the pups, when they're old enough to take meat, and they'll start taking meat from about 5 weeks onwards. And if anybody hasn't seen these wild dogs before, this is the pack of 21, and they're generally up in the north. And they have graced us with their presence, which is absolutely fantastic. I've not seen a wild dog like this before in my life. This is absolutely fantastic. And we do tend to have two times of the day where they're very active for a couple of hours, and that tends to be first thing in the morning and late on in the evening. You see the begging behaviour, licking the nose, licking the muzzle, begging for food. Who was that from? Linda. Thanks, Linda in Dallas, saying dogs were domesticated about 15,000 years ago. So quite a long time, and that's why obviously the wolf instinct, even though it's there, it has obviously been suppressed quite a lot. But if ever you watch your pet dog at home, if you ever see them going to bed, you'll actually see them turning around in a circle quite a lot before they sit down. And the reason for that is because they still have that behaviour of pressing the grass down before they go to sleep. We've got coming in. There's something coming in that's grabbed their attention. Could be another dog. Yeah, it's another dog. Shame. Doesn't look like they were actually successful in the hunt. They must have misunderstood Andrew. All the adults have taken a well-earned break. And that's why the pack numbers have increased so much. So they do rely heavily on the members of the pack bringing back that food. And because of that, the youngsters don't really go out to help hunting until maybe later on in the year. So you're looking at about a year old before they'll actually start going on hunts. They'll maybe tag along behind until the hunt's finished. But once the youngsters have grown up, the dogs will start to move on and around the home range a lot more. So they're only really territorial around their den site. They won't go out and just mark territory out on the home range. But their home range could be thousands of hectares. I'll say if you've got a private game reserve, you're not allowed to have wild dog unless you have over 24,000 hectares. Which gives you some idea of how much space they actually do need. And where the game is abundant, they'll have 2 set meal times. Yeah. Andrew here. Hi Doug, welcome on board this morning. Wanting to know if one of the pack was injured, would the pack eat it? Generally no, Doug. They actually are able to still eat. They'll tag along behind, maybe a couple of kilometers behind the pack. But once they get to the kill, they're actually able to feed, and they're able to, if there's nothing left, because wild dogs can strip a carcass bare in minutes. An average pack of about 10 can devour an impala in about 15 minutes. But they can come up behind the pack and they'll actually beg the adults, just like the youngsters were begging the adults as they came back. And the adults will actually regurgitate the food for the injured as well. Now obviously if it's very badly injured and it's not going to be able to move, then it may be a different case. And unfortunately that's fighting over a piece of grass in the background there. So unfortunately I've not read anything to suggest that they will take anything back to the injured. I don't know if Mark's had quite a lot of experience with wild dogs. Maybe he can comment if that does happen. But so I think if the dog isn't able to keep up with the pack, it's very, very difficult to say. I mean, if it's quite a large pack, maybe they wouldn't necessarily come back to feed it. But you never know. I mean, the bonds of the pack seem to be quite strong as well. And as I say, in small packs, the females will actually share milk with the pups, which is quite unusual for a large pack. And even the female will be extremely aggressive towards any other females. If you try to come close to the den while she is nursing the pups. And that's why there is so much research going on into wild dog behaviour, because I think it is because it's so varied. So what is true for one pack might not necessarily be true for the other pack. Even in the same area, it just depends on the dynamics. So I think certainly, Doug, if it's able to keep up with the pack, then there's no reason for them to really turn on it. Okay. And that was from Hi Brian, great to hear you're on board this morning. And also just asking if a dog gets sick or injured and falls behind the pack, what happens. As I say, as long as it can keep up with the pack, then it will still be fed. And as I say, animals are extremely resilient, and they do heal extremely well. I mean, there'll be animals that you'll look at and you'll think there is no way this animal is going to survive with this injury. And yet give it 2 or 3 weeks and those injuries start to heal, and they'll actually start to cope with whatever life throws at them, and that actually separates the strong from the weak. And there's been a monkey on the old reserve where it's quite severely injured, and it kept coming back to camp every so often. And it was actually, I mean, to look at it, said no, it's on its way out. It was thin, it's got a huge gash down the side of it, and it was in quite a bad way. And yet, after about 3 or 4 weeks, it actually started to heal quite well. And I've seen lemurs at the zoo that he used to work at. They had quite nasty fights. Obviously we would have a vet to look at them, but generally we would just keep an eye on it and they would heal extremely well. Floppy Ear as well. Someone sent me a video of Floppy Ear, the spotted hyena, who's the matriarch of the clan in this area. I've seen a video of her where she has been ripped to shreds, literally, by lions. And she looks like she's on death's door. But she pulls herself through, she heals, and today she is quite a large hyena. I've seen her myself, she is quite a large hyena, full of attitude, and obviously that has made her become the matriarch that she is today. So sometimes I think we don't give animals enough credit in that regard. And they are willing to survive, they are willing to go through anything that life throws at them. I'm just going to move forward a little. We're actually not really able to see these guys too well now. I'm just going to turn around a little bit more and see if we can... Oh, here we go, we've got a pair coming in here. I'm sure they will move a little bit from here today. It looks like they are starting to find shelter in the shade. I think they will eventually move away from the side of the road. This is quite a busy road, generally. But at the moment they seem to be enjoying the coolness on the bank. Obviously there would have been a little bit of dew there this morning. There was a little bit of dew out. It might be a little bit cooler, helping them to cool down. Hi Jennifer. Welcome on board this morning. And Jennifer wanting to know how wild dog react on foot. As far as I understand, they're not really too fazed by humans, but I'm sure Mark will correct me if I'm wrong. But I think they're pretty much like cheetah in that regard. They're not really too bothered. I've never been on foot with wild dog. And I think they have this attitude about them that obviously safety in numbers, if anything comes their way, as long as there's enough of them, they don't need to really worry too much, whether it be a lion or a hyena. And say they outnumber the individual, then they're more likely to be able to chase that individual off. So I think just walking in amongst or walking where wild dogs are, I think it'll be the same sort of principle. They'll see you, but they won't be too fazed by you. But they won't really recognise you as a food source either, unless you start running, I suppose. Then I think you might have a bit of a problem. As I say, if you want to become food in the bush, you can start running. I think Mark was... That's quite interesting. Mark's saying he has had quite a lot of experience on foot with wild dog, and saying that they do become alert, they have the alert posture, and apparently a strange bark, one that you only really hear when there's other predators around. But they don't seem to try and attack humans, but they seem very alert of humans. As I say, humans aren't really the normal food source, and that goes for most animals. As I say, they don't really see humans as a food source. He jumped because there's another adult just to the side rolling over, and as he broke the branch, the other ones will stop rolling over immediately, and just the movement of the adult stopping rolling over was enough to scare the individual that was breaking the branch off. Quite comical. You can hear Cokie Franklin calling behind me. It's not its normal call. It's calling because there's a predator in the area. The dogs don't seem to be too phased. As I say, just judging by the reaction when the adults came back, there didn't seem to be much that was regurgitated for the pups. So I don't think they were successful. As I say, it sounded like they were on the radio. It sounded like they had made a kill and they were on their way back. I think I must have just misunderstood, because it really didn't seem to be that there was much. The adults were running away from the pups. And the sound that I keep hearing them make is quite a high-pitched whistle. When your dog whines, it's that kind of, but it's a little bit higher pitched. Okay. Hi JJ. Just saying you're a bit confused about the social structure of the wild dogs, and you understand that the females have a hierarchy, as do the males, which is very true, and they'll each have an alpha, so it'll be the dominant pair. Let's see if we can move again. I just want to see if we can maybe have a look at the pups here while we're not able to see the adults too well. I'm going to run one over here. Open place here. Sorry? Try this. Okay. Gentle persuasion going on there. And you're saying it doesn't sound like it's a matriarchal or a patriarchal society, which is also very true. And how do the other individuals fit into it? And as you're rightly saying, there is the alpha, the most dominant male and female, and they will lead the pack. And it depends on how strong the individual is. So you may have the female that's slightly more dominant over the male, or you could have the male slightly more dominant over the female. And obviously the individuals ranking just below them. But apparently they can also influence each other. So if the female is slightly less dominant, she can also refuse to follow where the male goes. So she can also decide the direction as to where the pack will go. And obviously the higher ranking individuals are going to be ranking over both males and females. And the females, if the pack gets quite large, then you will get females, generally related females, breaking off and dispersing. And they'll join up with a male group. If they're sisters, they generally are sisters, but if they get quite a large group of males, you may get one of the sisters actually moving on again until she finds a pack, so that she can obviously become the alpha female. And obviously within the male pack you're already going to have a more dominant male, and he will then mate with the female that migrates into his pack. And that's how they'll start producing pups. And apparently this is very effective at dispersing the genes, and because of that the genetic or the gene pool is extremely wide in wild dogs. But obviously it's not a normal way for the dispersal of the youngsters. Generally it's the males. In a group situation it's generally the males that get moved out and the females stay. But it's actually the other way around in wild dog. So and again that's why there's been so much research into wild dog, because it is so intricate. It really is quite amazing. And obviously the subtle behaviour as well. And as I say, in some circumstances it's actually better to be more subordinate, because they will actually beg the more dominant adults for food. And if they haven't been fed, then they will possibly regurgitate food for them. And as I say, there's obviously a strength there to be the most subordinate individuals, because you won't need to put too much effort into getting your food. We do have a number of names: African hunting dog, wild dog, painted dog. Quite a number of different names. But unfortunately they have been quite harshly persecuted, and they were always deemed, up until even fairly recent, I think it was the 1960s or somewhere along those lines, maybe even slightly later, that they were actually a pest, and they would actually be shot at, and that's one of the reasons why the numbers have dwindled so much. I think there's only around 3,000 left in the whole of Africa. I think originally there was around 100,000. It's gone quiet. So obviously that first scout where we saw the pair a couple of mornings ago, and they were running past impala and zebra, animals like that. This is Mark was saying, looks like they were out on a scouting mission to see how much food was in the area, and it seems to be very true. And obviously they're using Sydney's dam. I don't think they actually went past Gowrie Dam. That's possibly why they're using Sydney's dam to go and drink from. Maybe they're not aware that Gowrie Dam is there. Maybe they are. But Sydney's dam from here is not as close as Gowrie Dam or even Buffelshoek Dam. What a fantastic way to spend a Sunday morning with quite an endangered species, and one that we don't get a chance to see very often here. And this is only really my third time of seeing wild dog in the wild, and to actually see so many is absolutely fantastic. Look, that there's about 10 pups, the rest of them adults. 11 adults in total, by the looks of it. And they're pretty much going to be like this for the rest of the day now, until it starts to get a bit cooler later on, and the adults might go and hunt again. They will try and hunt at least once a day. As I say, where there's a lot of prey, they can have set meal times, a breakfast and an evening meal, in the very successful areas. But remember, they don't... Okay? And they don't have claws to help them grip onto the meat like cats do. So they have to work together to actually pull even an impala down. A very different hunting style to the cats. Okay? Hi Hal, just picking up what I was saying earlier about private game reserves and being allowed to have wild dog. There are very strict regulations, especially for small reserves, to restrict people having too many animals in a game reserve. And basically when you have a game reserve you need to have a balance, and people don't always understand that balance. So that's why there's regulations in place to try and help guide people into keeping that balance. And that falls under everything. So depending on the size of the area that you may have, some people may have a small plot of land, 300 hectares, and it would be very unfair to have a herd of 30 elephants on that 300 hectare reserve. They're going to run out of food very, very fast. It's not enough area for 30 elephants, especially even if it's the sweetest feld. It's not going to be fair on the animals. So that's why there's these regulations in place to stop people putting too many animals on the feld and destroying the feld, and to stop people having too many carnivores to take out the herbivores. You need a natural balance. So as I say, if a game reserve, a private game reserve, wants to have wild dog, then they need to have at least 24,000 hectares. And on my old reserve they were looking into trying to get wild dog, but we fell short by a couple of thousand hectares. So we weren't able to get the wild dog in there. And because they are such a successful hunter as well, they will wipe out a lot of the herbivores in a small area. And that's one of the reasons why you need such a large area, and obviously plenty of herbivores. And generally their main prey is the impala size species, but they will go for zebra as well, young wildebeest, so those sorts of sized animals. I'm just going to move again and see if we can see where the adults are laying. We're actually on the termite mound at the moment, see if we can get a different view of them. And I think there's probably another question coming through. Hi Stephen, welcome on board this morning. And Stephen wanting to know what are the predators of wild dog, since they're in such a large pack, and are they able to fight off a leopard? Well Stephen, a single dog would find it very difficult to fight off a leopard. Wild dog, looking at about 30 kilos. Leopard, even a small female, you're looking at about 40 kilos, maybe more, with protractile paws and a heavy neck, so they've got a lot of muscle. What I want to do is try and get my vehicle through there. Try and do a bit of a 3-point turn here. Is really the numbers that help a wild dog. And apparently hyenas will follow wild dog and try and take their kill. But quite often there's enough wild dog to actually steal it back if it does happen that the hyena steals a kill. The wild dog is on its own, and a lion may try and kill a wild dog. But again, if it's in a pack, then the lion might just think twice before doing it. That's one of the things about the African animals. If you're small, you make sure you have enough members of your group to try and outnumber the larger individuals. It looked like one of the adults actually started moving on, so we may even get the pups moving to keep up with them. I wonder if the adults, the pups are actually staying put, so I wonder if they're actually going to go off and hunt again. They've had a rest. Confirm you're looking for me.
I'm looking for a tractor.
Maybe they're just looking for better shade.
Frozen knowledge as well. When my daughter informed herself. I'm glad. Can I take it today? And it's also a good.
Quite interesting, the youngsters are still lying down on the opposite side of the road where we left them. Kind of just looked up to see where the adults are, and then they've gone back to sleep again. I'm thinking we might just drive down the road here. Quite a nice view here. Okay. Hi, Leanne. Leanne, asking about the babysitter earlier. Remember, as we came in, there was one adult dog with all the pups. I'm wondering who it was. I didn't even look actually to see if it was a male or female, to be honest. And I would expect the responsibility to be shared, because the pups are no longer being nursed. So it would make sense that either a male or female could be a babysitter. But on that one, as I say, I'm not entirely sure. And as I say, it didn't register if it was a male or female that was with them. I'll see if I can try and look that one up. I've not seen anything in my readings so far. I wonder if Mark can comment, see if he's noticed before if it's been male or female that stayed behind with them. And Mark's saying from the camera that we had last year, there didn't seem to be any difference between if it was a male or female, but maybe the females slightly outweighed the males staying with the pups. Okay. Hi Diane, welcome on board to you and to your exchange student from Sao Paulo in Brazil. We've also got Nicole watching with you. Well, it's great to hear, Diane. And Nicole wants to know how big a pack of wild dogs can be. It's the first time she's ever seen wild dogs. And average pack is about 10, but they can reach 20, even 40, up to 60. And apparently before humans started shooting them, it wasn't unusual to see even 100 wild dogs together. But the average pack size, you're looking at about 10. So this is quite a nice big pack of about 21. And they generally are in the north. They're from Manuletti area. So they're quite a long way from where they usually den. But as I say, they are able to cover vast amounts of distances. They can cover around 10 k's a day on the move. Okay. Hi, Janet. Janet again, and you're not a pest. It's great to hear from you. This time wanting to know, can the female be pregnant? As you've read in a book that they can have litters twice a year. Strange, I've not actually seen that. I've pretty much read that it's usually once a year, and the reason being, if they've got litter sizes of anywhere between 2 and 20, then obviously it's going to put quite a lot of strain on the adults trying to bring food back for 20 pups, and if the female falls pregnant again, then it's going to put even more strain on the pack. But maybe if the pack is quite large, maybe that's when she falls pregnant a second time. But from what I read, they generally give birth every 11 months, something like that. And I say, it kind of does make sense, and that's when the pups sort of become of age, is about a year old. That's when they start to fall into the hierarchy of the pack, and that's when they'll no longer be able to displace adults from a kill, for example. Whereas before that, if they start begging and licking the adults will actually move aside from a kill to let the pups actually feed. So again, it's difficult to say, and most animals won't show that they're pregnant until the very, very, very last stage of pregnancy, when they're just about to give birth. That's when you can generally tell if a female's pregnant or not in any animal. And as I say, the other day there was some very, very odd behaviour. I took it as being territorial, but it confused me because they shouldn't be so territorial far away from the den, even if they were denning where we lost sight of them on Gallego shortcut. Still, that's too far away. We were thinking that they're actually urinating on Shabam Road and defecating, and also on Voyatala access. That's still a little bit too far away. But what I was also reading was when the female's in estrus, the male will also urinate on top of her urine, and I'm wondering if that was what she was actually doing. So maybe it was the dominant pair and she was in estrus, and apparently that's why there's also usually just the alpha female that falls pregnant. Other females can, but again, there can be quite some fierce competition if a female does fall pregnant, obviously depending on the size of the pack. I say the dynamics and the size of the pack changes a lot of the behaviour. So let's see if we can try and see. I haven't noticed any female looking particularly large. I'm going to try and move again, see if we can get a different view of them. They're all lying flat against the ground now. I was hoping that the pups might come over and join them, but they seem to be quite settled. I'll give them a few more moments. As I say, they don't see if we can move on. If there's anything else, unless everybody wants to stay with the wild dog. They are flats, but I don't think they're likely to change from a sleeping position now. Alright, everyone. The sound of the engine was just a little bit too much. Wild dog are just like leopards in that regard. Every pattern is different. You can actually identify dogs through their coat colour. I'm getting a little bit irritated by flies. What have you heard? See the torn ear of this one standing up now. And that's how, I think it was Henry who told us that they were from the pack of 21. That's how he told us that even though there was only 2 individuals, he immediately recognised them as those 2 from this pack. Wish lines were a little bit more easy to identify. They make life a little bit more simple. Okay. Hi Doug. Welcome on board again. I'm wanting to know, is there any similarity between the way that dingoes hunt and wild dogs hunt? And did I see any in Australia? Well, Doug I do believe it's a similar sort of method of hunting. Again, they don't have claws to be able to grab onto the prey, so they do have to work together to pull whatever it is down. And I believe they'll be going for things like kangaroos, because obviously in Australia there aren't antelope or deer or anything like that. The kangaroo is the equivalent. They'll probably go for smaller prey like wombats, quite possibly as well. And obviously kangaroos can cover quite vast distances, and you've got quite open areas, so the dingoes are going to have the stamina to keep up. So as far as I understand, they'll have a similar method of running down the prey, just like wolves do. They run down the elk in a similar sort of way. They have extremely good stamina, and once the animal tires, that's when they're able to overtake it and grab it. One of the dogs will anchor maybe the tail, while the other one grabs the lip, and unfortunately the rest of the pack will come in and either disembowel or maim it so much that the animal can't move. But I didn't actually see any dingoes while I was out there, Doug. And dingoes have actually been introduced into Australia. They're not really supposed to have been found there. They were introduced quite a while ago. Probably when the British sent people over there. But don't quote me on that one, but I think that's when it happened. It looks like there's actually 9 adults here. I'm trying to count them. So it's probably 9 adults. And I must have miscounted on the number of pups. Yep. Oh, wow. So, on the dingoes, apparently the origins could have been from Southeast Asia rather than the British. There you go. So that's why I said don't quote me on it. So Southeast Asia is where the dingo came from, or the ancestor of the dingo. And they are close related to the Asian wolf, Canis lupus. I'd say it's up to you guys. It doesn't look like we're going to get much more. We may be lucky, the pups might decide to come over, but I think everyone's pretty much settled in for the day. We could maybe drive around for the last hour and a quarter to see if there's anything else around. Everyone's happy with that. I say we don't know how long the wild dog are going to be with us. We're hoping. They seem to have been fairly settled here for the last 3 or 4 days. We thought that they moved out because they were around Sydney's Dam in the north, and last night they were also in that area, and that's where the guys were going to go and head out to have a look for tracks and take Smash to bump into the wild dogs just on the fire break here, just south of Buffalo's Hook Cut Line. Okay, Hi Nicole. Nicole wanting to know again, how do you distinguish between the alpha male and female of the pack? Excuse me. Sorry, was that me coughing? Don't know if that was me coughing or the wind blowing through the trees that just interrupted them. Sorry guys if that was me. But as I say, I've actually been trying to work it out myself, but generally you'd find the animals being subordinate to the alpha male and female. So the tail would be tucked between the legs, the ears would be low, they'd be low to the ground, almost begging forgiveness from the adult, or the alpha male and female, especially if they were meeting again for the first time after maybe a hunt or maybe a scouting trip. So you expect to see those sort of displays. Obviously licking the genitals as well, just like a domestic dog when they greet. And generally the subordinate animals, even like in hyenas, the subordinate animal will go and lick the genitals of the more dominant animal. Unfortunately, I've not had much experience with wild dog, so for me to be able to pick them out is quite difficult just by looking at what's going on here. I'm sure someone that studies and spends a lot of time with wild dog will be able to pick out the alpha male and female from the pack just by possibly the way they're sitting now. It sounds like most people are happy to stick with the wild dogs, and as I say, we don't know how long we're going to stay with them, but it is quite nice to be able to spend as much time with them as possible. And again, just like the cats, anything is possible. As I was saying, yes, they are flat, and they probably aren't going to move. But if they're hungry, which I think they might be, maybe if an impala walks by, it might just make them decide to start chasing. There is something going on over there with the other dogs. Let's go and see if we can see what they're doing. I'm going to leave them instead. I wonder, this might be why I miss maybe I didn't miscount the pups after all. Yeah, 11 adults here, so 2 may have been out looking in a different direction, maybe scouting another area. Obviously that was the greeting coming back though. This really is just so special, and if anybody is joining us, just tuned in, my name's Tara, I'm your guide this morning. It's such a wonderful sighting of wild dog. All 21 in the pack are now here. We've got all the adults, 11 adults in total. And the pups just on the opposite side of the road. Alex is on camera, getting some wonderful shots for you. Mark in final control, forwarding any questions you might have about the wild dogs through to final control at safaritop.tv if you would like to have any questions answered. And as you've been hearing, if I'm not sure about the answer, I've not had enough experience with these, then Mark also has had a lot of experience. And you guys can also help out as well. Okay. Hi, Jim. Sorry, Mark. So I was waiting for the last part of the question there, Jim. Welcome on board this morning. And Jim wanting to know, has there been any record of humans being attacked by a wild dog while they've been on foot? And as far as I'm aware, Jim, there's not been any on record. Mark has never heard of it either. As I say, I think it is purely because there's no reason for them to attack humans. They've got enough food where they live, and it goes for any animal. There's no reason to attack humans if they've not experienced eating humans. They find their food on a daily basis, whether it be antelope or whatever. They're used to eating that. They know what that is. So there's no reason for them to attack humans unless you have the injured or the old and unusual circumstances. Hi, Donna. Don't know, wanting to know about the hair on the wild dog. Looks like they've got very short hair and very little hair and a fuzzy tail. And that's pretty much what it is. You can see there's sort of almost a thickening of hair around the shoulder blades. And I would assume when they're fighting, that's sort of just a bit of extra protection for that area, the base of the neck. Tapirs also have that. If there's any jaguars around in South America, they also have quite a thickening, so much so that it's quite a thick, fatty area. So if a jaguar jumps on the back of them, they don't damage the spine as much. Same with the male lions also, it's to show off obviously how strong they are. Obviously by having a larger mane it's going to be a lot heavier, and so it's going to be a lot more imposing as well, makes them look bigger. But it's also protecting the base of the neck and where the spine starts. But they do have fairly short fur. I think for a short head dog, maybe like a Labrador kind of length. Station, are you looking for them a Dutch? If there's any station looking for them a Dutch, there's still Lalapanting steam on the fire break. They're all here now.
Okay, copy. They are on the eastern side of Djibouti Dam.
Affirmative, a little bit further east than what they were originally.
Okay, copy.
And again, just like in your pet dog, or wolves, or other dogs, the way they hold the tail is very important. It's one of the ways that they actually communicate. As I said before, being submissive, if you think about your pet dog at home, if he knows that he's done something wrong, you get a very submissive behaviour. And let's say his tail will go between his legs, his ears go flat, he sort of gets very low to the ground, and that sort of behaviour you will see. But if they're alert and if they're becoming aggressive, that tail will stand straight up and it'll be sort of bristled out almost. If you want to see the Mampimpans, they're a little bit further up the Ndlela. I've got all the adults with me here.
Okay, so this I can book us on.
I'm just hoping that once I do start up the engine again, I'm not going to disturb them. And quite often when you sit and stay with an animal for a while, you actually do start to pick up on little bits of information from them, little bits of behaviour. And that's why it is worth staying just a little bit longer, even when animals are flat like this. I know some people may get a little bit irritated when they are flat. But as I say, that's how documentaries are made, that's how research is done. And what is awesome is the fact that you guys can learn with us. So little subtle behaviours and things that happen within the pack that maybe they don't make it into the documentary because at that point it's not deemed important enough to the storyline or to what the people are wanting to tell you. But here, obviously, with it being 100% live, we can't say for sure what's going to happen. And obviously we had the two adults just come in from somewhere, and you had that whole pack reacting. After me saying, I don't think we're going to get much more interaction going on, it looks like they're all sleeping. And yet, 5 minutes later, all the pack were up and greeting two of the pack that were away. So quite often it is worth just staying a little bit longer and just seeing if there is anything that's going to happen. Now that one individual's got up and walked around looking for a better shady spot by the looks of it. And quite often there may be something very subtle that happens and the whole pack are alert. Something, I'm watching that individual, just keeping an eye on that one to see if any of the other pack are reacting to the fact that that one's moving. So if it's the dominant and he's deciding, okay, it's time to move on, then we may even see the pack reacting to that. And sometimes this behaviour is so subtle, but especially if you haven't had that much experience, then you don't think to look for it, whereas something you've had a lot of experience with, you start to look for these little intricate details. And the beauty is that you guys can also see this firsthand and actually start to learn what's going on. Okay? Hi Teresa, wanting to know if they've had any radio collars put on them, and is there any photographs that have been widespread so that we can identify them. I'm not seeing any radio collar on this particular pack, Teresa, but I do know there has been some research done, and I would assume it would be in Kruger side where they had the radio collar on the wild dogs. Sabi Sands doesn't tend to have collared animals. Apart from just know of the pangolin, there may be other animals that I don't know of. But I do know in the south, apparently wildebeest being collared here in the Sabi Sands, quite an unusual one. But I know in the south there's a lot of research going on. There's quite a few dogs in the south of Sabi Sands, and along with the cheetah. And I have been hoping to get one of those guys up for a fireside chat at some stage. But unfortunately it's not really worked in at the moment. Every time they're free, things have been happening our side, and every time we're free, things have been happening their side. So hopefully at some stage it'd be quite nice to try and get them up here and discuss what it is that they do with the cheetah and the wild dog research. See if we can learn a bit about all that. And as I say, looking through scientific papers can help you to a certain degree, and with all the research that goes on. As I say, what's true for that particular animal that was researched on could be very different for an animal in a different area. You may have the similarities due because of the species, but then you'll have the subtle differences of the area. It does actually look like, yeah. It's quite interesting. Apparently in Kruger there was actually quite a big push for people to send in photographs of wild dogs that they were seeing, and that helped them out a lot in Kruger because they actually thought they had more wild dog than what they did. and they found that out because of these pictures and where they obviously were taken, and they could actually see that the wild dog were covering a much larger area, and they were actually thinking that they were separate packs. And as the sun climbs higher into the sky, they're trying to find a better patch of shade to keep them cool. Which station coming into in the Dutch sighting?
Alec?
Good morning, Alec. Yeah, there's the one that you've just seen, but I've got the rest of the Chlamby here in front of me, and the monthly homes are just up on the road a bit further up.
On the cut panel.
Affirmative. There's a mutual visual of them from where I am, and the lumping times were literally just on the road. You can see they're getting a little bit restless now, moving around a little bit. So the flies are actually getting to a few of them. And looks like, I think the pups are coming over. I saw movement of one. Just off to the side. That'd be really nice to see if they do come over, and then the whole pack will be together. He just lost his movements. Just watching what the vehicle's doing, I think. So he's getting up here. Finally giving in to the flies, the male that was sat by the termite mound. You see, this one's actually following them. He seems to be very restless. I do wonder if this is the alpha male. He looked a little bit larger than the one that went up to greet him. And again, there was a little bit more dominant stance than the other one. He held his head a little bit higher than the other one. Yeah, that was the one that he just walked over, and the other one came to greet him. And they're trying to seek cover from the flies that are really starting to irritate them. You can see them shaking their tails, flapping their ears. As I say, trying to get into the vegetation. There's one even trying to bite at the flies. We go to this one here on the left. Oh, he's there, yeah. He's even trying to bite the fly that was buzzing around his head. Or her head, should I say. Oh, there's a pup coming up and having a squeak. I think there was actually some eye contact between the pup and the adult then. I've lost where it's gone again. So the pups, I don't know if we can zoom out. Because the pups are actually that side. And we've got the adults in front of us. Let's try and give you some idea. Okay? Hi, Teresa. Teresa wanting to know, are they susceptible to diseases like pet dogs? And they are, Therese, especially rabies. There's another very big one that lions also suffer from, which is canine distemper. But they are slightly different from pet dogs. There you go, there's the subordinate. You see it going down in front of the other animal there. So this one looks a little bit more subordinate than that individual. And remember, that was the one that was sitting by the termite mound. I think this is the alpha male, this very dark male. It's got a nick in his right ear. The one that's just laying down on the left. The other dogs seem to be giving him respect when he moves. Yeah, that one there. You see he's got 2 nicks. And I think this is the same one that we saw on the first day that we had the wild dogs. I'd put my money on that one, and he seems to be the largest out of the lot as well. I'd put my money on him being dominant, just from that interaction then. And of course he's just put his head down so I can't get a picture of him there. His ears are quite distinct though, with all the nicks in them. But as I say, they are slightly different to domesticated dogs. As I say, the domesticated dogs originated from the wolf, which is the Canis species, whereas the wild dog is Lycon pictus. So it's a slightly different genus. So there will be some diseases that the pet dogs get, and they'll be subtly different that the wild dogs won't have a problem with, because they may be genus specific. Okay, so I think we'll compromise and we'll move on now and see if there's anything else we can go and find. But that was fantastic to actually spend some time with them and just look at all those little interactions that we had there. As I say, now that I've seen that one last interaction, I would go for that particular individual just lying to the left of us as being the dominant male. And it was just that last interaction that's really kind of sold it for me.
Bingo, north of Telapen on Kilton Road.
But let's say we'll see if we can move on now and see if we can go and find some elephants. Someone's just found some elephants, so see if we can go and catch up with them. But this has been absolutely fantastic. I really hope they're going to stay around, I really do. But as I say, they can cover a lot of area. Okay. Oh, he didn't hold his paws. Sorry everyone, I'm going to start up the engine and I'm sure it's going to disturb you. 2, 3 heads up. Actually, we're not too bad. There was a couple there that they sort of jumped a little bit but didn't put the heads up, so that was good. Okay. Here you go. Stations leaving the Madutch planting steam on the fire brake just east of Tumblety Dam. No station in the lock. Hi Audrey, welcome on board this morning. And Audrey wanting to know from the, apparently there was a camera at a wild dog den site last year. And Audrey wanting to know if it's the same pack from the the dog camp and whatever happened to them. Audrey, it was in a conservancy that's quite far away from here, the Blue Canyon. Sorry. Blue Canyon, sorry. Blue Canyon. I was thinking it didn't sound quite right. The Blue Canyon Conservancy, which is quite away from here, so it won't be the same pack. But there was no one really to follow up on the movements of that pack either. So sadly, we don't know what did happen to them. And as I say, I do wonder, going back to the question we were having earlier about if the female is pregnant or not, if she does fall pregnant, it'll be about 2.5 months gestation period. And if what we saw the other day was her being an estrus, if they are in this area, they may decide to den here, although they do tend to use similar den sites over the years. But maybe if they decide that there's enough food around here, maybe they will den here. I mean, those pups do look old enough that it could be a distinct possibility that she could fall pregnant again. If that was indeed what we were seeing. So it is nice to be with the wild dogs in case they don't den, so we're taking every opportunity to try and show you the wild dogs. And obviously everybody doesn't tune in at the same time, so it is nice to try and stay with them a little while longer, to try and give as many people to see them as possible. And hopefully a few of you have been snapping away trying to get individual pictures, and maybe we can also build up a little database, so if they do move out the area, if we get a few individuals coming back in to maybe scout again, then we can also say, hey, that's from the same pack as what we had. Say, looking at the nicks in the ears, the facial and the body markings. And that male was very, very dark. He had a lot of black on him, especially on his front, and those nicks in his ears, which I managed to get a picture of. So again, if we are lucky enough to see them maybe this afternoon or over the next few days, and we can see some more interactions, and we can actually start to work out if he really is the alpha male. So I put my money on that one. The alpha female, didn't really see too much interaction there. Didn't really put my money on any one of those females yet. There's at least 2 females there. As I say, it's heavily weighted. It's usually around 1 female to 3 males in the pack. Sounds like the baboons came back last night. I haven't seen the baboons for a while. I was talking to Graham, and apparently they have. been doing something funny. They've been going away for 3 or 4 days, only coming back for a night and then going away again. It's almost as if they're sort of checking in and saying, hi, we're still around, but we're actually finding better food the other side. Yeah, actually, Alex is just reminding me. Finding a lot of food in our kitchen. Well, it's actually shocked a few people. I'm not going to name names, but side doors. We have sliding doors on 3 sides of the house. On one side, there's one latch that is broken, and one of the baboons has actually worked out if they push on one side of the door, it's going to slide open. And now that they've learned this trick, they've raided the house a couple of times now, because it's actually taken us humans a little while longer to understand the fact that once they found it out, they're going to do it again. So now we have hopefully a baboon-proof method of keeping that door locked. And hopefully they won't steal any more food, but we had to do an emergency run out yesterday to Hoodspray to go and get some more food for last night. And that's the price you pay for living in the bush and for not thinking, which none of us did. So the animals are very quick to be on the receiving end of an opportunity as good as that. You can't blame them, especially this time of year. Someone was also commenting on how low the dam was here at Gowrie Dam, how low the water was, and was that why we're not seeing hippos here? And I think that is the case. I think the water level is decreased quite a lot, and the hippos are no longer able to submerge quite as nicely as what they'd like to be. A lot of areas in the dam, I think there's possibly 1 or 2 spots. You may still get hippos visiting as they're going in there to search for food at night, but we may not see them staying here until maybe when the rains fall. Have a quick look at the impala down here. If there's any new viewers, I wonder if Nicole's seen impala before. Watching for the first time from Sao Paulo in Brazil. Sorry? Is there any stations still within Blob at Twin Down Road, Chelapan? I was just wondering if anyone's still with the Blob at Chelapan, Twin Down Road.
I live over there on the Twin Dam Road, north of Chelapan, by the drainage line.
Copy, thanks Henry. Which direction were they thundering?
They were just grazing around down the back of the move from the
Copy, thank you so much. You can see the tails flicking, ears flicking, also being attacked by the flies a little bit more. Now that the warmer temperatures have come back and started to rise, and we're starting to see an increase in the movement of insects, and we should start to see a few more reptiles around. So keeping a lookout for snakes and lizards. I've been seeing a lot more of the skinks. We've got the side-striped skinks, highly territorial, quite amazing to watch them. We used to have quite a tame one, and you could actually get quite close and watch it eating flies and things like that from the windowsill. few Nyala mixed in with the Impala there. See if we can go and catch up with some of the elephants. It's been a while since I spent time with the elephants. See if they're still around here. Henry seemed to think they were just browsing around. Hopefully they haven't moved too far from where we left them.
That's the barn heading west, along the military boundary.
And also people are commenting on the state of the bush as well, saying that it looks very dead and dry. And that's because we have just gone through winter, which is our dry season. Got a huge high pressure cell which tends to move over South Africa during the winter time, bringing very little rain, fairly warm temperatures during the day, obviously going very cold at night. But on the coast of South Africa you get the low pressure cells which causes the rain, so you tend to get the rain in the winter time on the coast. And then as we go into summer, high pressure cell moves and we tend to get our rain in the summertime. So we're looking around November for the rains to fall. It will take a few weeks. We'll have to start listening out for the Birchall's cuckoo, the rainbird, which will predict the rain. Start to hear quite a liquid call coming from the Birchall's cuckoo. The rain is on its way. It can be quite accurate as well. I tend to start predicting it on a daily basis. Quite a large bird, about this sort of size body. Red eye, copper back, black head, white breast. He kind of does a little bit more nice than that. Closely related to the cuckoos. They're actually in the same family as the cuckoos. They do produce or make their own nest, rear their own chicks, unlike the cuckoos. And I did hear the Cass's cuckoo again outside my bedroom window this morning. So the Cass's cuckoo is definitely back. That says, Mikey, Mikey, Mikey. But I've yet to see it. I've never seen a Cass's cuckoo. I have to start using some natural insect repellents as well as we go into summer. Maybe we should have like a little piece of Tamborti smoking as we're driving. Put it on the dashboard here. For those who are driving along, the smoke's going to go to the camera person, so maybe that's not a great idea. Make you ill. So a little piece of Tamborti bark is not going to cause too much damage. But if you try and cook with Tamborti wood, it's going to make you very, very ill. If you inhale the smoke as well, it's going to make you very ill. A little piece of wood is enough to help keep the insects away. Highly toxic plant. One that black rhinos eat. So the porcupines, that could be why they can be such an aggressive species. Porcupines are always in a bad mood. Quite a funny little creature. They'll stamp their foot and shake their quills. It takes them quite a while to relax. Maybe that's why they eat highly toxic plants like euphorbias and tambuantas. Black rhino is a little bit more aggressive by nature, but as I say, there could be a number of reasons to account for that. Then their white rhino cousin, wide-lipped rhino. Another name for a black rhino is a hooked-lip rhino. Hey, little tree squirrel. You'll be able to get him on the tree line if he stays put. He's moved around to the side. You can just about see his tail. And gone. Okay, listening out for branches breaking. There should be somewhere around here. Might have to try in the drainage line. We should still be able to see them next to the road. I think we might have to go to the drainage line though. Looks like they went into the drainage line from here. Gone very quiet.